Hey gang, welcome to Mzansi and USA News. Another reaction video on Dali Mpofu, who is a member of the Economic Freedom Fighters. Many of you knows him as an advocate, but obviously here he's not acting as an advocate, he's acting as a politician. We'll listen to his video, we'll interject in between. The purpose of this video obviously is to educate those who care, to have an objective mind, to receive proper education rather than propaganda. This video is riddled, filled with propaganda. That is why I saw a need to react to it. Okay, let's delve into it.
It's guaranteed that under the EFF, this country will be the better. EFF is a co-mandating.
What others describe as outlandish cabinet demands. They are demanding the position of the deputy president and 11 ministerial positions. Would you say the same, advocate?
No. Ironically, I do not think that their demands are outlandish because the ANC has decided to go to bed with them in order to survive. So they are in a position to ask for anything. They could have even asked for 20 cabinet posts. I'm sure they would get them because the ANC is trapped by its funders to accept the DA deal.
Mm-hmm. And this could...
Did you guys hear that? The ANC is trapped by its funders to accept the DA deal. Did any of you see any funders that voted on the 29th of April? You need to be very careful to separate facts from propaganda. Very, very important. We have heard this before without any evidence being furnished. The same could be made of any political party. The question is it true? First and foremost, where in the media was it recorded and we were shown? Because we've seen these letters between Steinhazen and President Ramaphosa. We've even seen the ones of EFF, which I'll do a separate video for. But where in those letters between the DA and the ANC did the DA claim 20 seats or 20 MP minister positions? Nowhere. So already you know that he's speaking from both sides of his mouth. He's not telling the truth when he makes that statement that they could have even asked for 20, they would have gotten it, because the DA did not ask for 20 and they certainly did not get what they asked for. Now that we know what they got, isn't it? Okay, let's proceed.
This would be some of the reasons why to this day we haven't heard of any cabinet appointment or announcement of the new cabinet. Is it that the ANC...
Now, this interview took place a day or so before the announcement of the cabinet by the president. Hence, that question. I just want you to understand why that question is arising. Let us proceed.
Is currently trapped and it is unable to make a clear or sober decision.
Yes, well, the ANC has trapped itself basically into the deal, the sellout deal with the DA. And so now they have concerns because the population is reacting negatively to it. And I think even its own membership is reacting negatively. So they have to try. That's why they made this announcement that over the weekend they'll be going around to consult the structures, because they can feel that there are actions within the structures of the ANC. Many ANC people that I've spoken for have even suggested that there should be an early conference, because they are so cross with this deal. And if I was in the ANC, I would support that, because this leadership has clearly sold out. I think the average voter who voted for the ANC, the last thing they had in mind was that they are voting for the return of apartheid, of a deal with the DA and Freedom Front. And therefore, the ANC is really miscalculated politically. I will explain it's political suicide what they've entered into.
The EFF is part of...
Now, guys, you already know, if you've watched this channel long enough, I'm not a spokesperson of the African National Congress. I cannot speak on their behalf. I'm not a member, have not been a member for years. The point, though, is so is Mpofu. Where does it get? I have a lot of friends in my circle who are ANC members, card-carrying members to this day. So how is Mpofu now speaking on behalf of ANC members as to why they voted for the ANC? He's completely clueless about what he's talking about. He has not performed any survey of the 40%, which is 6 million people, by the way, to find out why they voted for the ANC in the first place, whether or not they are happy with what is happening. The only people in the ANC who are unhappy with the ANC going into a GNU with DA and 9 other political parties, or 8 other political parties, are the left in the ANC. But remember, the left have already left the ANC. That's why Mpofu is sitting wearing a red, what we call cap, because he belongs to the Red Beret. Those are the leftists in the ANC. And also, the MK party represents the left in the ANC. So all those people who aspire to be communists and who aspire for what we call lawlessness, unconstitutionalism, have left the ANC. All those individuals that were cheering or oversaw state capture taking place, they have left the ANC. All the individuals who have shady backgrounds, like being implicated in VBS looting, being implicated in the failure of our state apparatus, such as the your ESCOM, your PRASA, your railway, that's actually PRASA, I'm repeating that, post office, SAA, and all our parastatals, all those individuals who are implicated there as etists or tenderpreneurs, they have left the ANC because Ramaphosa is giving them, in this renewal project, a clear indication. I mean, the Esma Khashules, you name them, all the individuals that are implicated in somewhat corruption have left the ANC. The ones that are still in there, they are hanging on for dear life, hoping they can win, how can I say, and get rid of Ramaphosa to continue looting. The South African voters have punished the ANC precisely because of these individuals who have left the ANC. So Ramaphosa is trying to renew the ANC by berating himself and sending to jail, hopefully he will, these individuals. And the truth is, if he is successful in doing that, then the ANC will certainly, because remember, 16 million out of 27 million voters who were registered, only 16 million voted, meaning there's a good 11 million people who did not vote. There's no telling who those people would have voted for. Are you following me? And we know historically, according to the polls, voters of the ANC rather not vote than voting for somebody else. So yes, the ANC has lost a lot of votes here, and now we know about the MK phenomena, which we don't know if it would have existed had South Africans gone to the polling stations at least up to 22 million, as it was the case many, many years ago. I think it was Mbeki's presidency. I stand to be corrected. You get the point. So we are not in a position to say that those who voted for the ANC so that it merges with the left, the very people that sought to destroy the ANC. No one, for example, currently that is in the ANC who believes that, except for the Ariti faction in the ANC, which I've already told you, those are people who don't like the rule of law, they don't like the constitution, and they know they've had their hand in the cookie jar. There's a lot of them. But because this video is not meant for me to give you those receipts, I just want to focus on what Dali is saying here. I made these statements just to simply rebut his assertions that he spoke to ANC voters, and therefore I can say the same thing for what it's worth. What does that even mean? How many people did Dali Mpofu speak to? There's 6-point-something million people who voted for the ANC. Did they report to Dali? Was there a survey done? I'm trying to show you that statement by Dali is completely bankrupt of the truth. It is meant to create a propaganda in the public domain that he knows better, and he doesn't. Remember, he's not an expert in what he's talking about. He's an expert in law, as an advocate. He's not an expert in politics. He's not an expert in the area in which he's now dabbling. Let's continue. Let's listen to him.
The Progressive Caucus, and we've seen the parties like PAC, UDM, and Al Jamaa jumping ship. What do you make of that?
Well, it was to be expected because the ANC's approach has been to try and use other parties in order to fix its negotiations with the DA. Remember, this is nothing else but a coalition between the ANC and the DA. What we call, it's a word.
So basically, Mpofu is saying all the presidents of those parties have no thinking of their own. The fact that they went and joined the coalition with the GNU with the ANC is because they have no thinking of their own. The fact that the AFF has been knocking on the door of its leadership to go on coalition alternatively with the ANC, what could have been the reason for that? Were they also being used by the ANC? Again, I want you to think about what I'm asking you, because all I'm asking you is, he is saying the reason why those parties have left the so-called progressive caucus, which I refer to as a regressive caucus, and joined the Government of National Unity, was because the ANC is using a particular strategy. But the EFF has been writing letters. Julius Malema has been meeting with the ANC, with the President Ramaphosa privately, and Floyd Shivambu, together with the negotiators of the EFF, have been meeting with the ANC. Floyd is on record 2 days or so ago saying that. So what was that all about? What was their attempt of trying to go into coalition government or Government of National Unity with the ANC without the DA and the Freedom Front Plus? What must that be called? Will it now become a GNU because they joined? And for as long as they are not joining, it's not a GNU? And you guys see nothing wrong with this picture?
Or marriage between them. The others are just bridesmaids. They are guests at the wedding. So they've
I want to rewind this because I want you to catch what he is saying within its context.
The parties in order to fix its negotiations with the DA. Remember, this is nothing else but a coalition between the ANC and the DA. What we call, it's a wedding or marriage between them. The others are just bridesmaids. They are guests at the wedding. So they've invited other guests at their wedding of the ANC and the DA. And, some of the guests might come because they want to have a piece of the cake or some of the meat. Guests at a wedding come for different reasons. But I think in terms of the numerical strength of the parties in parliament, it's clear. I mean, the parties that have 1 or 2 seats are not going to be any significant players. They are just brought there, as I say, for the aesthetics, so that you can say now we have 10 parties. But if those 10 parties between them have 9 seats in the National Assembly, that obviously is not that significant. It is
bearing in mind that on the day President Ramaphosa was elected in Parliament as president, nominated as president, and then subsequently won against Julius Malema 2 weeks or so ago, the EFF held a conference wherein Shivambu spoke about this caucus of parties, and he said there were 11 parties. And now today they are dissing them as one party, as one seat party in parliament. Numerically, they are completely insignificant. But when they were forming the so-called progressive, I'm not going to call it the so-called, I'm just going to call it what I call it. When they were forming the regressive caucus, they never said these people have got numerically inferior numbers, therefore. You get the point? They counted them when they were representing. Floyd says there is 11 political parties here in this regressive caucus. Nowhere did he say, even though others are constituted of only 1 seat or 2 seats or 1% or less than 1%. This is the hypocrisy of those who perpetuate propaganda. Mpofu is 60 years old. just turned 62 as a matter of fact. And he still perpetuates lies like this. Of course, he has been lying for a long time, but I don't want to get into his personal life. He has been lying for a long time, but he is still continuing doing that, obviously not for the benefit of our country. Because those political parties do not cease to be political parties simply because they've now aligned themselves with the ANC. And when they have aligned themselves with the EFF, they are political parties. When they align themselves with the ANC, they become sellouts. They become non-entities that are completely insignificant, who are what you call following bridesmaids and groomsmen. They are just coming to the party to observe the wedding. Can you see how ridiculous and disrespectful the so-called comrades of the EFF are? By the way, this is their ilk. This is how they speak. And for some strange reasons, youth are excited by this. And the question is, if the same language was directed at you, would you appreciate it? The answer to that is no, except you're a liar, right? And this is the problem why the EFF is not part of the GNU. They are not part of the GNU because of their language towards Ramaphosa and toward the demands that they have made. Now they are trying to measure with the DA's demands. The DA's demands are in public domain, and so are the EFF's demands. And their demands were a deal breaker. And they now want to create an impression that the ANC went the DA route because of some donors. No, we know why the EFF is not in coalition with the ANC. I'll show you later on in this discussion. But just in case I forget, Malema was interviewed on a radio station and he said he will give the votes of the EFF to the ANC if they make Floyd Shivambu what? A Minister of Finance. In which alternative universe will that reality materialize? That's foolishness, right? I made a video on this where I spoke about this. They demanded the Speaker of Parliament. They demanded now Floyd, on a different video, which I'm going to do a reaction video on, claims that, yes, even though CIC said this publicly, when we negotiated with the ANC, we never made those demands. But that's the reason why the chief whip of the ANC, the current chief whip, said the EFF is a strange party in that every time we meet with them, they say something contrary to what their leader is saying. They are confusing this way. Malema goes to a radio station or television station, and as a CIC, you expect him, whatever he says should be part of the policy decisions of EFF. But apparently, all the things he's saying publicly are not what they are saying privately. Well, that is their own problem, isn't it? But the ANC got to a point where they could not accept their request. It was ridiculous for them to ask for a speaker. It was ridiculous for them to ask for what you call a Department of Finance. And when they did not accept that, you know what was their first act in Parliament? To call for President Cyril Ramaphosa to be to be impeached. I did make a video on that. I hope you remember, or you can watch it. It's on this platform. But nevertheless, let's get back to Mpofu, because I was saying this to buttress to you that the EFF is not outside the GNU because of a principle. No, they are out of a GNU because their presentation was rejected. Their own demands were rejected. That's why they are out of the GNU. As for MK has said repeatedly publicly they will not negotiate with the ANC of Ramaphosa, meaning they wanted Cyril Ramaphosa as a president to resign. Even there, I made a video that is on this channel. So even they have not been sidelined by the ANC. No, they were brought into, they are the ones who've been rejecting publicly, saying they want the ANC to lose its president for them to even begin to negotiate with the ANC. These people are completely unreasonable. They want anarchy in this country. They want an anarchist like Jacob Zuma to become a president again. And Nhlamulo Ndlela did not hide that. I don't have to play the video, but there are so many videos when Nhlamulo Ndlela said this when he was being interviewed by SABC, that they want a 2/3 majority. Whoever is the president must pardon Zuma so that Zuma can ascend to his rightful place of becoming a president of the country and finish what he started. This is the problem with people who think that we are ignorant and we will not hold them accountable for their speech and for their actions. So right now they find themselves out in the cold. Hence the ANC made the move that they did, by the way, in KZN, was to recognize that these people are playing politics. They are trying to withhold this country at ransom, and the ANC undertook not. The ANC could have simply said the voters have rejected us. We'll see the people whom they voted, where will they take this country? But the ANC chose to be a responsible party in forming a government. Please bear that in mind. Okay? You may have similar sentiments as myself, very strongly against the ANC because of what it has done in the past 30 years. But please bear in mind, right now they are acting as adults. They are the only ones who are acting as adults in the room. Even the DA, for me, at some point in time, I felt that they were acting like children. The ANC is the only one who's acting like adults in the room right now. And I'm saying this being a person who is apolitical. I'm not apolitical parties, not apolitical parties. I'm an anti-political party membership. I'm very much pro-politics. We are talking politics right now. Okay, let's proceed. So let's revert back to Mpofu then.
Of course, because the solution to all this is a united block of serious opposition, action and challenge against this sellout deal. So it's obviously a pity, even if you lose one person with one seat to the other side. But that's the nature of the struggle. There'll always be people who are with you and those who are not with you at particular times. We don't need to condemn them, I think. But it's our duty as revolutionaries to win them back and convince them about the correctness of our position, because our position is 100% correct and history will vindicate it. The position of the DA-ANC coalition is backward, and history will show that too.
Do you foresee the MKP joining the progressive caucus?
Did you guys hear that? He calls the coalition, or rather he calls the GNU coalition of the ANC and the DA, thereby undermining all the other political parties that are there. And having done that, he wants to bring us along into this thesis of his, that this is not a GNU, it's a coalition. You see that? Now, and then he makes a statement that it is backward without any evidence. And of course, because the interviewer, you can see he's wearing EFF regalia, you don't expect him to be objective, to say, what do you mean that it is backward? You see that? Okay.
Yes, the MK party has already declared, I think, through their parliamentary leader, Judge Hlophe. I know he prefers to be called Dr. Hlophe. I still call him Judge Hlophe. Judge Hlophe, that they would align themselves with organizations. He specifically mentioned the EFF, ATM, and other dependable forces of the left.
All right, let's get the ball rolling. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, the people of South Africa, Africa, and the world for tuning in. My name is Titus Tungo Erikozaramsengo Natsoleka. We're coming to you from Winima Digizela Mandela House here in Johannesburg. And today we're joined by Nkulwa Munula, advocate Dali Mpofu. Thank you very much for coming through. Welcome.
Good to be back, Titus.
Indeed. Okay. And now you're back at a very critical time when, as the nation, politically, there's so much political not instability, but uncertainty, right? And the seventh administration seems to have been met with so much delays when it comes to the configuration of cabinet or new government, if you like. Now, just give us the constitutional know-how. If you can just explain to us what are some of the constitutional requirements when we look at what happens post-elections in terms of, constitution or configuration of government?
Yeah, well, I'll give you both the constitutional analysis and also the political one. Yeah. Constitutionally, as you know, that the Constitution prescribes that after an election, 14 days after an election result has been pronounced, then the first sitting of Parliament must happen. That is why the first sitting of Parliament set on the 14th of June. where the office bearers and the president were elected. Thereafter, there is no constitutional deadline for the president to constitute a government, but obviously he must do so within a reasonable time, because we are.
So far he's correct, 100% correct in his assertions.
In a situation which is unsavory at the moment, because all the executive power is now resting with one person, the president. And in Gauteng, it's resting with the premier, because they both have not announced their cabinets. But so that's the situation as far as the constitution requires. But what we're in now is a political crisis rather than a constitutional one. In that the reason why, for the first time, the cabinet is normally announced within 48 hours or so. I think in 2019 it was an exception. It was after 2 or 3 days. But the reason why there's a crisis now is because the ANC lost the elections badly. You know, and that's a reality which I think they have not yet understood, that they've actually lost the election in a bad way. I mean, in the recalculation that has been done is now that they had 39%. But whether it's 39% or 40%, it's a massacre. And that's the reality. Now, the ANC wants us to believe through propaganda that they are still in charge, but they're not. The people who are in charge now is the DA. And that's what
I believe.
Yes.
Okay, I must interject there. You don't have to be intelligent to know that the president of the country is the one that is in charge. You don't have to be very smart to know that 40% is twice almost versus 22% or 21%. It's almost 2 times that number. You don't have to be intelligent to know that if the president has a prerogative of appointing cabinet, this is the reason why, including the EFF, has been writing letters to him and seeking his audience. That's how powerful the man is. And here Mpofu is telling you that they are not in charge. You know what? It's up to you to really to decipher the lies this man is telling with a smiling face. He's saying the DA is in charge. How did the DA become in charge? The DA is simply smarter than those who negotiate on behalf of the EFF. That was visible. Hence, they've been outsmarted. Hence, the ANC chose them. The ANC, on its own inclination, they were more inclined to go the EFF and the MK route until MK said all the nonsense, they spew all the poison that they did publicly, that they don't want Cyril, thereby trying to choose a president for the ANC. But they were the alternative choice. Why? Because they are an offshoot, a breakaway from the ANC. So it would have been much easier for the ANC to work with them, good people. I want you to look at this without drinking the toxins Mpofu is providing you. The MK was an alternative party to go. But because Zuma has come out publicly, launched a manifesto that seeks to dismantle our constitution, and I did the manifesto, by the way, on this channel, where he speaks about sending pregnant girls to Robben Island, where he seeks to take our land and give it to the chiefs. The list is endless. It's ridiculous. Okay, Zuma wants to take us back to the Stone Age, and he calls our constitution a Roman Dutch law. The ANC realized that, okay, apart from their rhetoric, they continue and they are consistent in the issue of the ANC of Ramaphosa. I've done a video on this. So that's why MK is not part of, because of their own doing, not because the ANC chose to side with white people. And I'm saying this being a person who doesn't believe the ANC has done anything wrong. Okay? They have not done anything wrong by going with the DA. However, it is important for you to know that the DA was not the first choice of the ANC. Anybody who says that is lying through their teeth. If Zuma was a respecter of the constitution and he formed MK to, as some people believe, that he's just trying to stay out of jail. If that was the only reason why Zuma formed MK, he did not have a beef that included Ramaphosa not being the president of. Right now, we'll be talking something else. If Julius Malema was not greedy, demanding these positions that they've demanded publicly, I'm telling you, the ANC would have formed forces with them and ruled with them. There is evidence all over. Here in Gauteng, the EFF is the one that made the Panyaza Lesufi to be premier, and they allowed him to govern the last time. And they have allowed the ANC and indeed the DA in some other municipalities to govern. So the EFF has never been anti-DA. Okay, so this new stance that they are bringing on the floor, that now they are not going to go into government with the DA, is nothing but politicking. And it cannot be correct for those of us who have got a brain of our own that is functional, that every time other people who are not us change their minds, we will change our own, because then that means someone is not thinking. Are you following me? This is very, very important. So Mpofu is not telling the truth here. The ANC is in charge. The president is the one who elected all those ministers, and those ministers serve at his behest. Now, sure, they got 40%. Sure, they lost a lot of votes. So is the EFF. So is the DA. As a matter of fact, mathematically, the DA, even though they gained 3 seats in parliament from 84 seats to 87, mathematically, they lost 141,000 votes in these elections. And 141,000 votes is actually more seats. So, yes, they gained seats, but and percentage-wise, and this is only, okay, there's a difference. Should I explain this? Should I go into greater detail? Okay. I'm not going to go into greater detail. I'll paraphrase it. If you go and look at what is the percentage that the DA got in 2019 elections, and what was the numbers, the actual figures, move away from the percentage. Focus on the numbers, because the percentage is a function of the number vis-a-vis the entire population, meaning the total votes. What did the DA get in numbers? Let's say they got about 6 million. The last time I think they got about 3 point something million. If that's what they got, you focus on that vis-a-vis what was the total population, the total number of people who voted. That's what the percentage is made out of. So what is important for you to know the exact numbers they had the last time is to look at the exact numbers, not the percentage. Compare those numbers to the numbers that they got this time around. That's how you will know that even though the percentage seems to have increased, but the actual numbers are lower. That's the same as being number one in a class as a student, but you got 70%. And your parents shouldn't be happy if you were an A student, because 70% is not A. You are still number one in class, but yet you got 70%, meaning your rating has come down. The DA in this instance, in their performance of numbers, they have come down. They themselves know this. Okay? I don't want to deviate much by showing you these statistics. You can check it out for yourself. Look at the numbers. You will see that they are 141,000 less than what they had gotten in actual figures nationally. That's the numbers. The seats are informed by the percentage in the overall population of the people that voted. That's what informs the seats. The 22% or the 21 point something percent vis-a-vis the 20 point something percent that they had received the last time. So nevertheless, I hope that is clear. So the point I'm making is that even the DA lost votes. The EFF lost votes. So everybody in these elections lost votes. The only gainer or people who gained in this is the MK, because it's a new party. There's no one that gained here except for MK. So it's therefore incorrect to say the ANC lost. Yeah, sure, everybody lost, including the EFF. The EFF is battling to get to 10%. In the next elections, I think they will be sitting at 6% or even less than that. Nevertheless, let's come back to what Advocate Mpofu is saying, that the ANC is not in charge, the DA is. That is a statement that is patently false. The DA would not have written the letters that they did if they were in charge. They would simply have made decisions. Don't fall prey of propaganda. The letters, the mental gymnastics, psychological gymnastics that Helen Zille and her cronies were playing, leading to the announcement of the cabinet, That is strategy. It's called strategy. Okay? It's called strategy. Oh my goodness. When you implement a strategy, there are different tactics that you utilize, but the tactics are not the end in themselves. They are seeking to achieve a particular end. I'm not going to go and fully develop this thesis because it's not necessary. You can read these things for yourself. Okay, let's proceed.
Hard to believe, yeah. And that is through the making of the ANC, which has taken the power, political power, and the trust of the people back to forces that represent apartheid, such as the DA and the Freedom Front. And I can assure you, more than half of the people who voted for the ANC never dreamt that that is what they were voting for, that they were voting for the return of the of power to the DA and Freedom Front, the forces that still represent people who were captains of apartheid. I'm not talking about a generation. I'm talking about people who were participants and who voted for apartheid several times. The National Party that brutally murdered our people. All those people who were torturing people and killing detainees are now being given power back by the ANC. So that's the crisis.
Okay, now guys, I'm going to do a separate video that's going to deal with advocate. I'm going to have part 1, part 2. I'm going to do an analysis of Advocate Mpofu until he finishes his say in this video. Right now, I'm pausing him because I want to explain something to you. The DA has never fought to sustain apartheid. The DA has never once promoted apartheid. How do I mean? Pay attention. The DA is an offspring of the Progressive Federal Party, of which Helen Suzman was the sole parliamentary representative between 1961 and 1973, and it became the Democratic Party after merging with the National Democratic Movement and Independent Party in 1989. Do you see that? Now, Helen Suzman, I want to read what Musima Imane said. The DA, currently the official opposition of South Africa under the interim leadership of John Steenhuisen, in November 2017, former DA Musima Imane paid tribute to Suzman, noting that every value we call our own in the DA can be traced back to the principles Helen fought for over 36-year-long career as a member of parliament. Now, many South Africans do not know this truth. That is why I'm going to take time to buttress this point. The DA comes from the Progressive Federal Party. It was never the Nationalist Party. It never merged with the Nationalist Party. Mpofu is lying when he says that. Helen Suzman opposed apartheid at the risk of her life for the rest of her life until apartheid died. This is very, very important. This is South African history, not the history the EFF wants you to believe that they seemingly make up as they go along. Now, here is the party that perpetrated apartheid. It's called the Nationalist Party, Nasionale Partij in Afrikaans, also known as the Nationalist Party. It was a political party in South Africa from 1914 to 1997, which was responsible for implementation of the apartheid rule. The party was an Afrikaner ethnic nationalist party, which initially promoted the interests of Afrikaners but later became a stalwart promoter and an enactor of white supremacy, for which it is best known. It first became the governing party of the country in 1924. It emerged with its rival, the SAP, during the Great Depression, and splinter faction became the official opposition during World War II and returned to power, with the Nationalist Party governing South Africa from 4th June 1948 until 9th of May 1994. Do you see that? The country for the bulk of this time was only a de jure or partial democracy. As from 1958 onwards, non-white people were barred from voting. You see, you hear that. In 1990, it began to style itself as simply a South African Civic Nationalist Party. And after the fall of apartheid in 1994, attempted to become a moderate conservative one. The party's reputation was damaged irreparably by perpetrating apartheid, and it rebranded itself the New National Party in 1997 before eventually dissolving in 2005. Do you see that? Can you see that? So you see that it dissolved in 1995. But what happened to it in its dissolution? I'm not going to bore you with all of this detail. You can read it for yourself. I want to show you that Mpofu was a member of the African National Congress, and so was Julius Malema. And every time they talk about history, they seek to rewrite it. These individuals are liars and cannot be trusted with history, right? Observe the last sentence here, or rather, let's read the second last sentence, where it starts by saying it participated. It participated in the government of national unity between 1994, still talking about the Nationalist Party here, and 1996. In an attempt to distance itself from its past, the party was renamed the New National Party in 1997. The attempt was largely unsuccessful, and the new party decided to merge with who? With the DA? What do you see there? African National Congress, to which Mpofu was a member of at this time, and he never protested anywhere for this merger. Please, I want you to understand, if you understand language, if the Nationalist Party merged with the ANC, that means there are none of its residues in the DA. Why? Because the DA became a Democratic Party, which subsequently became the Democratic Alliance. And I'm going to show you something about the DA. This is very important, because these people are lying on you on purpose. That's why I'm saying this interview by Mpofu is nothing but political propaganda. So let this session be educational for you. Helen Suzman, right? Born 7 November 1917. Up until 1st January 2009, was a South African anti-apartheid activist and a politician. What was she? An anti-apartheid activist. Never a pro-apartheid individual. So Mpofu is willing to erase history so as to rewrite it. She presented a series of liberal center-left opposition parties, that is, she represented them, a series of liberal center-left opposition parties during her 36-year tenure in the whites-only National Party-controlled House of South Africa at the height of apartheid. She was an opposition party, good people, in a Nationalist Party-controlled government, but she was in opposition. You can read all of this for yourself. The political party that she formed was the United Progressive, Passive Reform, Progressive Federal. Then it became the Democratic Party. Then it became the Democratic Alliance as we know it. No lineage to the Nationalist Party. No relationship. Pure opposition. This woman is of Jewish descent. She's not an Afrikaner. She was literally mocked in South African parliament by Afrikaners and called names. Okay? The same way black people are called the K word, she was called names in South African parliament. This is very, very important. It's irritating to have people who are as educated as Mpofu rewriting history. What type of hatred should an individual have? Consider, I don't want to attack Mpofu personally, but Mpofu is a hypocrite of note. Okay? Some of you are very smart. You have already figured out what I'm talking about. He wants people to hate white people. But he himself does not have that hatred for white people. He hates white people for as long as he's going to benefit financially. He's agitating this new black consciousness, this new anti-apartheid, new anti-whiteness. He's agitating for it, but when the ANC merged with the Nationalist Party, its own oppressors, he never once complained. Mpofu did not leave the ANC for the reasons that it merged with Nationalist Party. No, 1,000 times no. Where was he? Where was his dissent when this happened? He was happy with it. Are you following me? Okay, there are things I'm not allowed to say by reason of my religion, so I'm not going to say them. You can figure them out for yourself. Nevertheless, yes, they did come to my mind, but self-control is about controlling them from emerging out of my mouth. Let's continue then. Now, I'm not going to bore you by getting into the detail of Helen Suzman's history, but it is important for you to note that Helen Suzman was a white woman in terms of the classification of skin colors in the world, who stood against apartheid when it was not fashionable to do so. I would like to point out to you that she's not the only one. People like Joe Slovo did the same. People like Bram Fisher did the same. And they lost their lives to this cruel apartheid government against which, as white as they were, they stood against. Okay? This includes the guy that is now a member of the EFF. So I'm not... what's his name now? Well, you know him. They call him Mbangazit. Manuel. No, not Manuel. Oh, how can I confuse Manuel like this? I'll tell you his name now. That's Carl House. Mbangazita is Carl House. Now, Carl House is another Afrikaner who joined the struggle. There are many more where that came from who fought against their own government or people who look like them. They despise apartheid. We never refer to these individuals as apartheid sponsors or pro-apartheid. Why? So why would the founder of the DA be referenced, or the DA be referenced back to apartheid when they had nothing to do with it? When I've just showed you evidence of how the apartheid perpetrators joined the ANC. Their last president is Martinus van Schalkwyk. Find out who Martinus van Schalkwyk joined. He was a minister out of the African National Congress. So he is rewriting history, and that's why I'm calling this propaganda. Listen to what happened, some of the things that happened to Helen Suzman. Listen to, firstly, these are some of the statements Suzman made. Suzman was resolute in her opposition to all form of racial discrimination. Early in her career, a white woman said at a caucus meeting, well, I don't know what about Mrs. Suzman, but when I go to museum, I don't like it if some strange black man rubs himself up against me. Suzman retorted, don't you mind if some strange white man rubs himself up against you? Later in her career, she mused in Parliament, I do not know why we equate, and with such examples before us, a white skin with civilization. This is the nature the woman was. She never ever believed in white supremacy. And this is the founder of the DA, that Mpofu is disdaining and lying through his teeth. That's no different from lying about Bram Fisher, Bears Node, Joe Slovo. The list is endless. Others died brutally. They were bombed into pieces. That is Slovo's wife. The list is endless of white people, Africans and English, who fought against apartheid. That is why Nelson Mandela said, I have fought against black domination and I have fought against white domination. There is no justification for racism in our country, good people. None whatsoever. Listen to what they abused this woman who had all the privileges. All she needed to do was to simply quit while she was ahead and stop fighting for black people. Okay? Listen to this. Suzman was subject to anti-Semitic. What is anti-Semitic? Is a hatred of the Jews just simply because they are Jews. Suzman was subject to anti-Semitic and misogynist abuse by Nationalist Party's MPs in Parliament and out of Parliament. Frequent comments were made to her in Parliament such as, we don't like your screeching, Jewish voice, or go back to Israel. One Nationalist MP, Pete Quornhoff, said to her in Parliament, if I should come home one evening and my wife should rant and rave the way the Honourable Member of Houghton did this afternoon, there would be only one of two things that one could do to her. I think she deserves a good hiding. In May 1965, P.W. Porter, then Minister of Colored Affairs, remarked, the Honourable Member for Houghton is in a habit of chattering continually. If my wife chattered like the honorable member, I would know what to do with her. There is nothing that works on my nerves more than a woman who continually interrupts me. She is like the water dripping on a tin roof. In 1980, now in case you didn't know, P.W. Botha here was literally abusing scripture as it is written in the Bible. In case you don't know, for those of you who don't read the Bible. In 1986, she had the following exchange with the then state president, that is Botha. Helen Suzman, stupid, P.W. Botha, woman. When Prime Minister Verwoerd was assassinated in Parliament Chamber in 1966, P.W. Botha, the then Minister of Defense, had accused Suzman of being responsible. Imagine that, saying, it's you liberals did this, now we'll get you. She demanded and eventually received a formal apology, but the enmity between the two remained. In the early 1980s, she had stayed to observe police dismantle shacks in black settlements and take occupants to jail. P.W. Botha warned in Parliament that her conduct was bordering on illegal and said, I'm telling you that if you break the law, you will see what happens. Suzman responded, the Prime Minister has been trying to bully me for 28 years and he has not succeeded yet. I am not afraid of you. Do you know what it is to fight? Right? This is exactly what this woman was doing. And suddenly, some people who are Freedom Day revolutionaries, when there is no oppression, are telling us that they are more revolutionary than this individual who stood to be killed through letter bombs and all the askaris that the apartheid government had. This woman stood against the most brutal government for your freedom and mine. I'm not saying she was alone in that. You know my views concerning that. I've done videos in this area. Our freedom was fought by multiple forces from different angles. Let's not undermine those who fought from a certain angle and did not fight from a certain angle. It's no different as those who were in Robben Island claiming today they have a right to be corrupt because we didn't go to Robben Island. We simply must dance to their tune. Are you following me? Let's continue. And then so listen to what she says. The Prime Minister has been trying to bully me for 20 years and he has not succeeded yet. I am not afraid of you. I never have been. I never will be. I think nothing of you. She is saying this to the Prime Minister that has absolute power to send her to jail. And in case you thought that this never crossed your mind, you'll find out as we read. On one occasion, P.W. Botha said, the honorable member for Houghton is well known, does not like me. Suzman interjected, like you, I can't stand you. She was often harassed by the police and her phone was tapped by them. She listed her name in the phone book and often received phone calls with obscene, racist and threatening messages. She had a special technique for dealing with such calls, which was to blow a shrill whistle into the mouthpiece of the phone. Marie van Zyl of the Kapi Commando, an ultra-conservative Afrikaner woman political organization, wrote to Suzman protesting the latter support for heathens, and that is us who are heathens. By the way, that's where the K word comes from, okay? For those of you who are in the know, it's an Arabic term used today by Arabs. Nevertheless, let's continue. Suzman protesting the latter support for heathens and boasting that her own people, the Voortrekkers, that is now the Afrikaner woman Marie van Zyl, was boasting that the Voortrekkers had brought the Bible over the mountains to the interior to the blacks, meaning they brought the Bible, the Afrikaners, to South Africa. She asked what Suzman people had done, that is the Jews. Suzman replied, you say your people brought the Bible over the mountains and ask what mine did? They wrote it, dear. Did you see that? They wrote it, my dear. So when you go and look at the speeches that Suzman delivered in Parliament, the opposition, how she stood there, you would not have the audacity to lie on her like the EFF, Dali Mpofu, and many of its cronies who keep on referring to the DA as a party that wants to take us back to apartheid. The DA could not possibly dream to do that, good people. Why? They were never partakers in apartheid. They opposed apartheid to the point of a detriment of their own lives. This is very, very important for you to know. Okay? This is that is why I can never associate myself with whiteness, nor associate myself with blackness. I will criticize white supremacists wherever they are found. I will criticize black supremacists wherever they are found. This is very important for you to know. The EFF is not fighting for my rights as a black person. They are fighting for black domination, for black supremacy. And black is not supreme. God is. Very, very important for you to learn if you learn nothing from this video. In February 1974, LCJ Botha, nationalist MP of Rustenburg, remarked, "When she gets up in this house, she reminds me of a cricket in a thorn tree. When it is very dry in the bushveld, his chipping makes you deaf, but the tune remains the same year in, year out." That's how steadfast Susan was a thorn in the flesh of the apartheid government. That old Afrikaner males felt this way because of her presence in parliament when we were not there. Can you say we feel the same way with the EFF that seeks to disturb parliament at every opportunity that they have? No. 1,000 times no. Nevertheless, let's continue. In her fight for the Bantu, that is obviously black people, the honorable member sings the same tune for year after year. These are apartheid masters saying this about the founder of the DA, good people. So how do you then reconcile this with what Mpofu is saying in that studio? There is no reconciliation save that Mpofu is lying through his teeth. He is seeking to rewrite history, and EFF thinks they have exclusive rights to our history. She famously advised John Foster, Prime Minister from 1966 to 1978, to someday visit a township in heavy disguise as a human being. When a minister complained of the murder rate in his constituency, she advised him not to go there or it will rise by one. She's saying this to a sitting prime minister. Now, don't dare go there. Otherwise, the death rate you are lamenting, it will grow by your body. This woman was radical in a parliament of people who hated black people. Okay? She was a radical in a parliament of people that really hated black people. Later, as a parliamentary white opposition to apartheid grew, the Progressive Party gained, that is in 1974. That is 1974 to 1989. But Helen Suzman was by herself for 13 solid years in this parliament. Okay? Listen to this. After the 1976 Soweto shootings, MP, that is Member of Parliament, Dr. H.M. J. van Rensburg said, "It's a pity you were not one of them." That is the people that were shot dead in 1976, Helen. And another called her a saboteur of police. Suzman herself said, "Every Nationalist Party MP should go to at least one funeral for the unrest victims heavily disguised as human beings." Did you hear that? She did not even recognize them as human beings, good people. Helen Suzman told them in their face. It's not the same thing as these so-called revolutionaries who are living in a freedom. We have not had oppression in South Africa since 1994. So for Julius Malema to say the things that he is saying, he can't go to jail for them. This woman stood going to jail, stood receiving letter bombs, stood being shot at. These were the risks this woman was faced with, the most brutal government. You can read the rest of her story. It makes a fascinating reading. You can read her biography. It makes a fascinating reading. This woman visited Nelson Mandela. Listen to what Chief Albert Luthuli have to say about this woman. What Oliver Tambo have to say about this woman. So we now have to believe that all our leaders were sellouts to believe Mpofu. This is the immoral Mpofu. We have to believe, and men of high integrity, we have to disbelieve them and believe Mpofu. No, guys, I'm sorry. This is a joke. This is a serious joke. Okay, guys, so I would really like to end this video over here because I think that part 2 will then continue from where he explains what is a GNU and so on and so forth. I don't like to making long videos at one go because of people's span of attention. Okay? But it is important for you to note that it is propaganda that the DA ever participated or voted for apartheid. That's a lie. And the party of apartheid was the Nationalist Party. Where is the Nationalist Party? It merged with the ANC in 2005. Remember that. Do not forget it. And Mpofu in 2005 was a member of the ANC until EFF was formed 10 years ago in 2014, meaning those were his comrades that he claims they killed us and killed our comrades. Those were his comrades in the ANC. This never bothered him once. Please bear that in mind. Okay, let me love you and leave you. I will allow comments as long as people engage with the content. I don't have a problem with that. But when people start using insults instead of focusing on the raw history that I gave you, then of course I will kill the comments. That goes without saying. My intention is to educate people because there are forces that are seeking to destroy our democracy. Our democracy is unique. Please understand that we are actually the envy of the world. South Africa is a free country. We are not under oppression. That is why in one video that I did recently, I said, who is oppressing the EFF? Then let it write its own songs and stop borrowing our liberation songs. Let it write its own songs and start singing those songs against its oppressor. Because if they are oppressed, that means they are oppressed by black people. And therefore, they need to target them as their songs. And stop. Why is their struggle racialized? When white people are not in power, when white people died for freedom to arise. Many black South Africans don't even know the litany of white Afrikaners. It's not only Mpangazit. White Afrikaners who stood against apartheid. White English, white Jews that stood against apartheid. Many South Africans are completely oblivious to this. This is the reason why some of us can never ever be racialized in our attitude, in the spirit of our attitude. Nevertheless, let me love you and leave you. I will make part 2. Until then, ciao, ciao.